Welcome to Geoscope, your window into how global shifts ripple across economies, industries, and nations. Canada and the United States, once bound tightly by steel, aluminum, and energy, are now facing a sharp economic rift. Trump's sudden 50% tariff hike has shaken supply chains, while Ontario's electricity surcharge threatens to switch off power to the northern U.S. At the center of it all, Prime Minister Mark Carney is charting Canada's response, halting exports, fast-tracking projects, and seeking new trade routes. This unfolding standoff could redefine North America's industrial backbone and reshape global trade. Let's trace how it began. In June 2025, a move from the White House sent shockwaves through global markets. President Trump escalated his America First policy, doubling tariffs on imported steel and aluminum to 50%. The justification was national security, but this time the measures fully extended to America's closest ally, Canada. It was a stunning break from decades of trade precedent, targeting a partner once thought untouchable. The impact was immediate. Across Canada, steel mills slowed as export revenues plunged. The deepest cuts were felt in the intricate cross-border supply chains built over generations. The highly integrated auto industry, where parts cross the border multiple times before a single car is finished, began to seize up. From aerospace to consumer goods, the economic engine of North American trade sputtered, threatening jobs on both sides of the border, but Canada refused to engage in a tariff war it was sure to lose. Instead, a new strategy emerged. Ontario Premier Doug Ford identified a critical American vulnerability. He fired back not with tariffs but with a potent threat, cutting off the vast electricity exports that flowed daily to power-hungry U.S. states like Michigan and New York, which relied on Canadian energy to keep their lights on and factories running. This wasn't an empty threat. As a shot across the bow, Ontario imposed a 25% surcharge on power exports. The move generated an extra $250,000 to $300,000 a day, but the financial gain was secondary. The real message was a stark warning to Washington: this is just a taste. We control a vital resource and we are prepared to use it as leverage. The effect in the U.S. was electric. Grid operators raised immediate alarms, warning of instability, soaring prices, and the very real possibility of rolling blackouts. The threat was no longer abstract, it was tangible. Within days, Washington was forced to the table for emergency talks, compelling Ontario to pause the surcharge. It was stunning proof that energy could spark negotiations faster than diplomacy alone. What began as a tariff dispute over metal had morphed into a high-stakes, electrified showdown. The message from Canada was now crystal clear: push us too far, and we can flip the switch. A new, dangerous precedent in North American relations had been set. What began as a tariff dispute over metal had morphed into a high-stakes, electrified showdown. The message from Canada was now crystal clear: push us too far, and we can flip the switch. A new, dangerous precedent in North American relations had been set. For Carney, the message was clear. Canada couldn't keep relying on a neighbor that buys 75% of its exports. The sudden imposition of tariffs wasn't just a trade dispute, it was a brutal wake-up call. This exposed a dangerous, decades-old overdependence that could no longer be ignored. In response, Ottawa launched a sweeping pivot. The new doctrine was clear: diversify trade partners, decentralize critical supply chains, and harden the nation's resilience. This wasn't just a policy adjustment, it was a fundamental rethinking of Canada's place in the 21st century global order. A $5 billion corridor fund now fast-tracks the very arteries of this new independence. Pipelines to carry energy to tidewater, ports to reach global markets, modernized energy grids, and robust digital infrastructure. The goal is to forge new links to Europe, Asia, and emerging markets, turning away from the volatility of a single partner. Security is being bolstered too. In the high north, Canada is deploying advanced Arctic radar systems with Australia to monitor increased activity. A $420 million military expansion signals greater self-reliance. Most tellingly, Ottawa is reviewing all major U.S. defense deals, including a possible pivot away from the F-35S. A move that would send shockwaves through the Allied defense establishment. Digitally, Canada is mandating local data storage and building homegrown cloud systems. Citing national security and citizen privacy, this new framework is modeled on Europe's sovereignty rules, a clear declaration that Canada's data will no longer be controlled by foreign entities. Carney's strategy signals a paradigm shift. The era of depending on assumed U.S. goodwill is over. Canada is done being a junior partner and is forcefully charting its own independent course on the world stage. The Canada-US supply chain is one of the most deeply integrated economic relationships on the planet. Every day, billions in goods flow across the border. In the auto sector, this integration is legendary. A single vehicle component might cross the border 7 or 8 times, part of a just-in-time manufacturing process that leaves no room for delay. But the sudden imposition of steel and aluminum tariffs threw a wrench into this finely tuned system. It wasn't just a tax, it was a shockwave that created bottlenecks and uncertainty where there was once seamless efficiency. Canadian steel and aluminum producers were hit hardest. Mills faced immediate threats to their viability. The United Steelworkers called it a direct assault on jobs, demanding Ottawa retaliate and prioritize Canadian materials for domestic projects, insulating workers from foreign protectionism. The pain quickly spread. Small and mid-sized firms from aerospace to packaging found themselves caught in the crossfire, their costs rising and competitiveness falling. It became a scramble for survival. Meanwhile, larger producers in food and pharma began the expensive process of diversifying their supply chains, looking to new markets to reduce their dependence on the U.S. The response was swift. Ontario escalated beyond electricity, banning U.S. firms from some provincial contracts and removing American liquor from shelves. Federally, Ottawa unleashed over $30 billion in counter-tariffs, targeting iconic American products like bourbon, orange juice, and ketchup, a move designed to inflict political pain in key U.S. states. For the Canadian worker, the risks were real, as layoffs loomed. In response, unions intensified their lobbying, pushing for green subsidies to retool factories. Calls grew louder for made-in-Canada mandates in public projects, arguing taxpayer dollars should support Canadian jobs in a time of crisis. Energy, once a background issue, has become Canada's sharpest weapon. Ontario's 25% surcharge on electricity exports, roughly $7 per megawatt-hour, hit hard, as northern U.S. states depend on Canadian power for 1.5 million homes. Ontario's 25% surcharge on electricity exports, roughly $7 per megawatt-hour, hit hard, as northern U.S. states depend on Canadian power for 1.5 million homes. The move funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars daily into Ontario's coffers, while U.S. consumers faced higher bills and grid instability. Public outrage drew comparisons to Europe's Nord Stream crisis, underscoring how quickly energy politics can escalate. Though the surcharge was paused during high-level talks, Ford warned the plug could be pulled again if pressure continues. Meanwhile, Ottawa is eyeing LNG exports and Quebec hydropower as new leverage points. Though the surcharge was paused during high-level talks, Ford warned the plug could be pulled again if pressure continues. Meanwhile, Ottawa is eyeing LNG exports and Quebec hydropower as new leverage points. The message is unmistakable. This isn't just about tariffs anymore, it's about literal power. Canada's strategy is no longer defensive, it's a proactive reset. Carney is leveraging G7 and Indo-Pacific alliances, upgrading ports, rail and highways through the Corridor Fund, and locking in trade routes under CPTPP and CETA. Carney is leveraging G7 and Indo-Pacific alliances, upgrading ports, rail and highways through the Corridor Fund, and locking in trade routes under CPTPP and CETA. A minerals pact with Japan has cemented Canada's role in EV battery supply chains, while energy policy balances fossil fuels with carbon capture and green tech. A minerals pact with Japan has cemented Canada's role in EV battery supply chains, while energy policy balances fossil fuels with carbon capture and green tech. On the digital front, Ottawa is investing in sovereign cloud systems and stricter data rules, insulating against foreign interference. Military posture is shifting too, with expanded Arctic bases and radar networks reducing reliance on the U.S. umbrella. In short, Canada is building resilience across every front, preparing to withstand the next global shock on its own terms. What started as a tariff fight has become a profound structural realignment of Canada's economy and its global posture. Ontario's electricity surcharge was more than retaliation. It was a calculated warning shot. Carney's government isn't just playing defense, it's proactively rewriting the playbook, investing in new infrastructure, fortifying digital and defense capacity, and forging global alliances far beyond Washington.